Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Greg Mooring, and welcome to the YSU Alumni Lecture Series. Tonight, we are speaking with YSU alum Larry Davis. Larry A. Davis received a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from Youngstown State University in 1976, with a major in sculpture and a minor in photography. He subsequently relocated to Southern California, where he received a Master of Fine Arts degree from California State University in Long Beach. Larry was teaching at the university art when he was presented with an opportunity to join the Walt Disney Company. After a 30-plus year career, he retired in 2016 from Walt Disney Imagineering and as an executive producer and creative director. His final Disney project was overseeing the design, development, and execution of the main entrance of Shanghai Disneyland. Throughout his lengthy Disney career, Larry continued to create art and show his work in numerous galleries. In retirement, Larry maintains a studio in Los Angeles in the home he shares with his wife, Maureen, while working on a new series of sculpture. Welcome, Larry, and thanks for taking the time to talk about your career and experiences at YSU.
Thank you, Greg. It's great to be here, and it's good to see you again. Haven't seen you for a while. Maybe someday we'll get to do it in person.
Yeah, maybe someday I'll get out to California. I do have to ask you, where are you broadcasting from? Is that your studio?
Yes, this is in my studio, which is literally part of our house. If I walk out the door over there, I'm on our staircase that goes either downstairs or upstairs. So, yep.
Well, that's great. It's nice to see. Well, let me start off with asking you a question. I understand that you began your college career experience as a biology major while playing drums in a rock band. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. In fact, my entire career has been what I like to refer to as a non-linear career. And so I will impart some words of wisdom to those watching, especially those of you that are just in the beginning stages of your career. It's important to set goals and work toward achieving those goals. But my wisdom has taught me through the years that it's also important to consider alternatives as they present themselves, and they will along that path. And that's kind of the story of my life and literally what I wanted to share with you today. I'm going to talk kind of fast because I have a lot that I want to cover in a short period of time. And I think I'm going to start by sharing my screen. We're going to try to do that throughout because as an artist, the visual piece of it, it's always been important to me. So we're going to start and then I'll answer your question very specifically. See if I can share this screen, how it works. And we'll hit the play button. Okay, so this is the first piece of press that I ever got. I grew up in Salem, Ohio. This is in the Salem News, and you can see my mother decided to put my name on my sleeve there, and I think that was just because she didn't want to forget who I was. I found this in some files just going through it a couple of weeks ago. I had lost it for years, but my mom clipped it out, and I think this was when I was in 8th grade. I was part of what is called FSA, the Future Scientists of America. And I won several awards at science fairs. And this is an example of us getting the press for winning one of the science fair awards. It wasn't until way later in my career that I realized the reason I won the awards had nothing to do with me being a great scientist and everything to do with me being able to put together really cool exhibits. And that's what it was all about. So at the same time that I was doing this, I had a lot of nervous energy. In fact, I still think I have a lot of nervous energy. I try to channel that into something creative. And at the time, my nervous energy was, I was always banging on the table, banging on my legs. And so when I told my parents that I wanted to take drum lessons, they were like, okay, good. Maybe that's a way to channel this nervous energy. So they allowed me to take drum lessons, but I started off with a little practice pad, and that was a rubber pad to learn the rudiments. They wanted to see if I was serious about it. And when they realized I was serious and I was really sticking to my lessons and stuff, they bought me a snare drum and then eventually a drum kit. And that led to this. The first band that I was in, we were the Spectrums. This particular image was taken on the stage at the junior high school auditorium. I believe it's Kent State Extension now in Salem, Ohio there. And it was a talent show. This was the first live appearance that our band did. And we were the hit. We stole the show. So this was the beginnings of a rock and roll career for me. but I still love the sciences. I was still studying about science in school. In fact, back to the science again, I actually had a laboratory in my parents' basement. I was dissecting animals that I would find in the woods. I was doing all sorts of things because I loved the sciences. But the band started kicking in and we became sound barrier. Now this is a little later down the road, but when I was in 8th grade, which I believe is the same time that photo of me in the Salem News was, we had our first record on the radio as the sound barrier. And that record was being played at stations throughout Youngstown and Cleveland, Pittsburgh. So we were a hot little rock band in 8th grade. And then by the time we were in high school, we ended up with our second record. This was actually the sleeve for the record. And we'd added Patty Pashishniak as a lead singer in this, and that's me sitting on the ground over there. So we were off and running. We were rock and roll stars, at least we thought we were. So then this is us playing live. Me and then I don't know if you can see him or not. Off to the right is Paul. Terry, the guy in the middle, was older than us by a year. So he was graduating high school a year before Paul and I were. And then off to the left is Mike, who was our keyboard player, and he was a couple years younger than us. So Terry graduated high school, decided he was going to go up to Youngstown State to try to keep the band together, and because we were playing quite a bit at that time. And so then a year later, Paul and I joined him. We rented a house up in Youngstown, and we kept the band together. And it was an important thing for us because we were, we all thought we were going to be rock stars, but we wanted to go to college too. And then what happened was because of the let's call it naivete that I had relative to registering for college, I registered late. So none of the general requirements were available. All the classes were full. So my first year of college, I was taking calculus, organic chemistry, physics, statistics, and playing in the band 5 nights a week. Needless to say, these two did not mix well. And so the point came where I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to be a rock star anyhow. Why do I need to go to college? So I dropped out of school. And I will then stop sharing my screen. Bingo. Okay.
Well, that's great. I love hearing about that, your experience in that rock band. Your title of your presentation is How YSU Instructors Helped to Shape My Career Trajectory. Seems to imply the decision to change from biology to fine arts. Is that a fair assessment? Could you talk a little bit about how you wound going from biology to the visual arts?
Yes. Okay. It does seem a little strange, doesn't it? Well, so what happened was, again, I dropped out of school. I figured there was no way I was going to be able to handle it. I figured we were going to be rock stars. Terry got an opportunity. Terry, our bass player, got an opportunity to go on the road with Maureen McGovern as her bass player. So he accepted that job. Then all of a sudden we didn't have a bass player. The younger guy in the band, Mike, who was a keyboard player, he was still in high school and his grades were failing. So his parents made him quit the band. So now what used to be 4 guys is down to 2. So we added an incredible guitar player, Mark Schuring, guitarist, singer, songwriter, and a keyboard player, Danny Hall, and changed the name of the band. Now we're no longer the Sound Barrier, we were Noah. So Noah went into the recording studio, Cleveland Recording. We recorded a whole album's worth of songs. And the problem was we had the same booking agent that was booking the Sound Barrier. And they were booking us into a lot of clubs, a lot of dance places, a lot of places where the people wanted to hear what was popular on the radio and what was, and what we were doing. We decided when Mark joined the band, because he was so good at writing songs, we were going to do all originals, nothing but originals. So we started not having as much work because our songs weren't very danceable. Our music was very different. And so what happened was all of a sudden I had a lot of free time on my hands. Band wasn't playing a lot. We're trying to figure out, okay, what's the next steps here? I had a really good friend, Bill Baird, who lived in Greenford, and he had taken a couple of art classes. And, I knew that he was taking the classes. I didn't know much about what they were. With time on my hands, I thought, maybe I'll pick up a paintbrush. And I just started painting some things and actually went to Cleveland Art Museum and saw a Salvador Dali exhibit. And so, the surrealist that he is really inspired me. So I started doing these sort of surrealistic paintings, first on my wall, then I got a piece of masonite and I was doing some paintings. And Bill as well as Mark, came back to me and said, hey, you know what? You're pretty good. Why don't you take an art class? And it was at that point where I talked to Bill and said, what was this class that you took over at YSU? And it was called Art Appreciation. And it was being taught by Al Bright. And so I thought, you know what? I've got time on my hands. I'm going to do it. So I took this art class. And Al really opened me up to a whole different way of thinking. And I started seeing things that I hadn't even thought about before. And it was all quite amazing to me. And so I got sort of inspired. And then I took another class. Lou Zona was teaching the drawing class. Lou now is heading up the Butler Art Institute, I believe. And Lou taught me how to draw. And I didn't really even know that I could draw. And then there was Jim Lucas, who he taught me to think outside the box. James Lepore, painting instructor. I was doing all these really tight sort of surrealistic paintings, and I did a really big one. It was about maybe 3 foot by 4 foot. It was a pretty large canvas. And he kept saying, look, you're too tight. You got to loosen up. You got to show some expression, and he was more of like a abstract expressionist. So I understood why he wanted me to do that. It just wasn't me. And then finally one day I just got frustrated. I said, and so I took this painting that I've been working on for weeks and I just threw some paint on it. And then I threw some sawdust on it. And then all of a sudden I felt like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. It sort of, again, opened up my way of thinking. And then what really happened was I decided to take a sculpture class. And I took this class with Richard Mitchell, or Mitch, as I like to refer to him. He and I are still good friends to this day. In fact, he may even be watching this, so I better be careful what I say. Anyhow, Mitch was teaching 3 classes. He was teaching pre-Columbian art history, he was teaching photography, and he was teaching sculpture. And I took every one of those classes because once I started taking classes from Mitch, a couple things happened. And one is I was watching him teach, and here was this guy with long hair and a mustache. And I had, at the time, long hair and a mustache, not as much up here, but long hair and a mustache. And I was looking at Mitch and I'm going, wow, what a cool job. He's teaching art, he's doing his own art, and this is a possible career path for me. So it was kind of like all of a sudden a light bulb went off and I said, this is something that would be really cool to do. And so I continued taking classes, and I think I'm going to share my screen again right now because I want to show you some of the stuff that I did in Mitch's class. Okay, so these are, oops, here we go. That's black. These are 2 of the first sculpture pieces that I made. I was learning how to work with materials. So in this case, I was learning how to work with wood. It was called the stack lamination process. So it was building up shapes and then carving and grinding them back down. The one on the right is about 6 foot tall. That was more of a technical thing, trying to figure out how I could do these twisted columns. The one on the left was one that the first piece that I did actually, and it's about 5 feet tall. I struggled with it. I was making shapes and I didn't like what it was looking. It just wasn't working for me. And Mitch came in one day and he said, why don't you turn that upside down? And I flipped it upside down and it changed the whole dynamic of the piece. Now all of a sudden it was, it was on a diagonal. It had a whole different quality to it. So I learned a lot from Mitch because he taught me to think differently than I was thinking. He taught me to approach things differently. It was pretty great. And then he taught me how to weld. And this is a little bit of a plagiarism from Mitch because Mitch was doing these welded car bumper sculptures. And I liked the way they looked. And so I ran off to the junkyard and got a couple of car bumpers. And this was the first welded car bumper, can't even say it, car bumper piece that I did. And then I decided to try to combine wood and the car bumpers together and came up with this piece. And then I started thinking, you know what, if I'm going to emulate Mitch, I better see if I can teach. And so I thought, what better way to learn how to teach than, because YSU had a whole education department, than to take some art education classes. This is where I met Elaine Uhas and Joseph Babish, both of whom were incredibly instrumental in helping me make a decision to go for a K through 12 teaching certificate. So in order to get that certificate, I had to do student teaching in elementary school. I did it in the middle school, and then I did it in the high school. And this is yours truly at Boardman High. Boy, my hair was getting a little thin there. Anyway, it was a great experience for me. And I thought, you know what, I can do this because I know a lot about art now, and student teaching seems like the right thing to do. So I ended up getting my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree and taking it from there. I think I'll stop sharing this now if I can figure out how to push the button. There you go. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's great. And, it's great to hear those names of those faculty, all of which I know. All right. And as a matter of fact, I shared an office with Al Bright when I first started at YSU. So we were good friends. Yeah, it's good to hear about him. I believe you also became involved in what you refer to as functional art. What exactly do you mean by that?
Okay, so that functional art is, it's like creating a piece of art that also can function as a piece of furniture. And there was an artist by the name of Wendell Castle. So I'm easily influenced by people whose work I like. And Wendell Castle was doing these functional art pieces, he called them. They're just furniture pieces. So I thought, you know what, I can do that. So I decided to move forward and create a sculptural table for starters. Okay. And so I'm going to share my screen again, if I can figure out how to do this. Share, and play. Okay. So this is me out in the garage working on this table that I decided to make. I wanted it to have stained glass in it, and I wanted it to be illuminated from within. And Bill Baird, my friend who helped talk me into taking an art class in the beginning, was doing Tiffany style stained glass lamps. And so I asked him, I said, hey, would you like to get involved in a project with me? I'm doing this table. Can you design the stained glass? So he did. So this was the first collaborative piece I did. Bill did the stained glass and I did the table. And this is what it looked like when it was illuminated. So again, it was a piece of functional art. It could be used as a coffee table. And then I had a gentleman who saw my sculpture piece with the twisted columns and said, hey, can you make me a bed that looks like that, where the four corner posts are these twisted columns? And so I cringe a little when I look at this, but yes, I can. And this is what I made. And the thing, obviously, just looking at it, it weighs a ton. Now it's in 4 parts, headboard, footboard, 2 sideboards, it weighs a ton. He loved it and he bought it. And so I was on my way to, at least, figuring out how to make some money doing art by turning it into something functional. And I will let it go at that and stop sharing if I can figure out. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for showing that. I know you're being modest, but I know what that takes. As a sculptor myself, I'm very aware of the effort it takes to do do those types of pieces, those laminated pieces. So it's quite impressive.
Pretty crazy.
At one time, you were considering graduate school at a university, but ended up in California. How'd that happen?
Yeah, there's another interesting story. So I guess I'm full of interesting stories today, huh? So what happened was this. By now, the band had split up. We had gone through, drama and troubles. I had also gone through some other personal problems. So it was kind of what I like to refer to as the dark period of my life. I was, trying to make a living doing art, but it's tough. Any artist will tell you that. And so I ended up working for a company called Maintenance Technicians, where I was literally tarring roofs, refinishing gymnasium floors, doing all sorts of construction-related jobs, which ended up helping me down the road because I used a lot of the skills I learned further in my career. But at the time, it was just a way to make a living. Mitch was kind enough to write me a letter of recommendation for Ohio University because I was thinking about going to graduate school. The problem was, at that period of my life, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready financially. I wasn't ready emotionally. So although I got accepted into Ohio U, I basically deferred it for a year while I tried to figure out, what I was going to do and how I was going to make this all work. So in the meantime, Mitch comes to me, and between he and Lou Zona, they said, well, look, in the meantime, while you figure out what you're going to do, we want to give you a one-person show at Kilcawley Gallery. I don't know if Kilcawley Gallery is still there or not, but at the time, it was a gallery because the Bliss Hall didn't exist and there were no galleries for students to show their work. So they gave me a one-person show, and I'm going to share my screen again. And we're going to go to this. So this is me in my younger days with my car bumper and wood piece, and then me with, you know, the bed and the table and other pieces. And it was a one-person show. So now I felt like, okay, well, the rock star thing didn't work out. Maybe I can be an art star. It was another, you know, awakening of hope, I guess is what it was. But what ended up happening is I still wanted to go to grad school. And I thought, because really, if I want to, and you know, I think I'm going to hit escape again on this one. I really wanted to go to grad school. Stop sharing. Sorry. This is the technical side of this. I'm still trying to get used to. So I started applying to grad schools, and I applied to a number of schools out west. I decided, you know what, time for me to leave the area, because I had collected some baggage through the years, let's just say, in my dark period. So time for me to leave town. So I decided to go west, and I applied at grad schools at Boulder, Colorado, Albuquerque, New Mexico, number of schools out in California, and one by one, I got letters of rejection. I had a friend who I went to high school with who had moved to Long Beach, California. And he was trying to get me to move out there. And I said, well, no, I'm going to go wherever I get accepted to grad school. Well, it wasn't looking so good for grad school. So I said, all right. So I packed up everything I owned in my Ford Pinto, and I headed out to California. And I got there, and a letter of acceptance to Cal State Long Beach had been forwarded to me. And so I was accepted into grad school. It was like, okay, well, that's really cool. I'm now going to grad school. Unfortunately, I didn't have any money. I didn't have any job. And so I ended up getting a job, and I worked at McDonnell Douglas, where I was building DC-10 aircraft, which turned out to be really good for two reasons. And one is that, so now I'm in California, I'm accepted to grad school, and I have a job. So those are all really positive things. The problem was I was trying to balance it all and figure out how to make it work. So at McDonnell Douglas, the good news was they allowed me to work around my school schedule. So I would work on the night shift and take day classes, and then work on the day shift and take night classes. And one of the classes that I wanted to take was bronze casting. I wanted to learn how to cast bronze. And so I signed up for a bronze casting class that was being taught at night. And again, I'm going to share my screen. I think I might be getting better at this. So this is gentleman that's helping me, this Claire Graham, and we are lowering a kiln on top of what's called the ceramic shell casting process, which is just a form of lost wax technique for casting bronze. And I'll tell you the significance of Claire a little later, but I was fascinated by all the processes. So to get the piece that I was making here, and that's my piece on the left, the one that we're lowering the kiln on. And what happens is you lower that kiln on, and without getting into all the details, it makes that shell around it hard as a ceramic, melts all the wax out of the piece, and then you eventually turn it upside down, and you pour the molten bronze in that piece. Well, I became Claire's right-hand man because I loved learning the processes. I loved being involved in the processes. And it was all fascinating to me. The mold making process, the whole process of getting from clay to wax to this ceramic shell was really fascinating to me. So then that piece that I'm pouring on the right there, this is the final piece. This is the first bronze piece that I ever made. And then I made a piece that is bronze and wood combined. I went back to my stacked laminated technique. And this was cantilevered out to the side. That bronze piece in the middle is very heavy. And so I had the lower box is actually a hollow box that's filled with concrete and rebar to counterbalance the weight. So this was a bit of an engineering feat. I'm always looking for a challenge, and this was one. Then I went back to the functional art. So I made this table lamp combo where I cast parts in bronze and the other parts were made out of teak. Then I did a whole series, what I call my anatomical series. And this goes back to my biology days and all the shapes and forms of a variety of, I guess, biology references, and then mixing a number of materials together. And then another table and chair that I put together. And then here you can see how the texture goes from the bronze into the wood. It was another challenge. And then I decided, because I needed to do a thesis in order to get my master's degree, I decided that I would make a set of drums. I would bring my music back into my art. and try to pull it all together. So this was a crude little clay model that I made of what I wanted to be a drum set. And this is the finished set. The stands that are all adjustable were cast in bronze. The rims that are all tunable or tightening, so you can tune the heads, are also cast in bronze. And the wood shells are made out of a wood from Africa called bambuya. And then this is me doing a little presentation at my master show. And I got to play a couple times after that on these drums. I haven't played them in a long time though. I'm a little rusty when it comes to the drums, but this was a really great time in my life. I had, shortly after this, I got my master's degree. I got an opportunity to teach part-time there. It was a pretty great experience. And I think I can. Well, you know what? Oh, I forgot one really important part since I'm still sharing the screen here. The gentleman who was teaching the bronze casting class, his name was Claire Graham. And he, bronze casting, the class he was teaching was part-time. He's the only part-time instructor there. His full-time job was running the entertainment art department at Disneyland in Anaheim, California, the original Disneyland. And Claire started throwing things my way like freelance stuff, because now here I am, I'm teaching part-time at the university. I've got my MFA. So I had achieved the Mitch goal. I was emulating Mitch, and finally got there. And then Claire said, hey, how'd you like some freelance work? And so he started throwing projects at me because he knew I had access to the foundry. He was no longer teaching there, but I was. So I started making bronze Mickey Mouse awards for him. This is, casting the Mickeys, cleaning them up, patining them, making the base out of wood, turning it on the lathe. I did a whole bunch of these. And then Claire turned to me, and this is what I was talking about right off the bat in this presentation, is that this was a fork in the road. Claire said, how would you like to work full-time in my entertainment art department down at Disneyland? And I thought, well, I'm teaching at the university. I'm next in line for a full-time position, but I thought, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. What do I have to lose? I have an MFA. I can always go back to teaching. So I started down there, and we were doing things like, this is a model I built for a parade float. So we're entertainment art. We're involved in all the entertainment in the park. So the live shows, the movie premieres, all sorts of interesting stuff. This was another model for another parade for the 30th celebration at Disneyland, and then got to see it through to fabrication and the actual parade. And then we did things like this was a marketing thing we did for a film called The Return to Oz, which bombed at the box office, by the way. But it was really fun putting together this whole presentation that people got to walk through, and they got to really see what what the film was going to be about. We tried to tell the story through these visuals, and then we did the first Tron film. I actually took this photo this is on the Walt Disney Studio lot, and we did a whole another environment that was all about Tron. But this one is just the banner that's hanging on the Hyperion Theater, which is where Disney premiered all their films in those days. That was a long time ago. And I was across the street looking through one of the windows to take this photo. So, okay, and now I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Okay. Okay.
Well, that is so interesting. I was going to ask you how you made the transition from doing some teaching and you were thinking that's where you're heading, and all of a sudden you're working for Disney.
I know.
And so I was wondering how that happened, and it's so amazing that you just never know who you meet and what they'll introduce you to.
It's true.
It's just so, it's pretty amazing. Well, but I understand you left Disney to pursue your art full time. How were you able to make that leap, and did that work out for you?
Well, it did. It's interesting because one of the things that happened in this Disney job is that, yes, I made a lot of connections in the entertainment industry. The job didn't pay very much, and it was really kind of a low-level position within the organization, and there really wasn't much room for growth. So I was getting freelance work from other people that I met in the industry. And so I finally decided I was making more money freelancing than I was in the actual Disney job. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to step out and take a risk and see if I can't do it. So I actually created my own company called Larry A Designs. I set up shop in downtown LA. I'm going to share my screen again for this one. So I had a studio partner. Okay, we'll push play. There we go. Ruth Ann, who had found this space in this old warehouse in downtown LA to say, hey, there's an empty warehouse here. If you're interested, and it was on the second floor. It was right up here. It was like 3,000 square foot. She wanted to use it as a studio space. I said, well, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to live there. So I literally built the space out, and this is in process. I built all these. I subdivided the space, and this again goes back to some of the skills I learned when I was working that maintenance technician's job. I learned how to, do drywall and all sorts of things. I actually built a shower, a dark room. I had a little kitchenette here. This was my, workable studio area. I had like sort of a display area, and then my living room, bedroom, and all of that. And it was a pretty exciting time for me. And I started doing all sorts of projects. One of the things, for example, somebody that I met that was in the television business, who was an art director, hired me as an assistant art director to do this, which was an HBO special for Gallagher, who was a comedian. And I worked with David Sakharoff, the art director, and we designed and built the stage set and then installed it. And then also worked on a bunch of TV commercials too. This was a takeoff on a Charlie Chaplin movie, and it was an IBM commercial. Just fun stuff. So aside from that, I was doing my art. So this is what I like to call art by management. So I made a model, then I built a full-size mock-up, then I broke the parts, broke all the parts and pieces, took them to a glass company, said, make me these parts, brought them back, used special glass adhesive that I found, and glued it all back together. And this became a hot seller. I sold a bunch of these to people in the entertainment industry that I had met. And then I did this whole series I called my microscope slide series, where I'm combining other materials onto 6-foot tall slabs of glass. I tried a number of different types of variations of that. Then I was doing model building again. So this was for a courtyard in a mall for an architectural firm. And then this was a table that I'd made for one of the TV producers that I was working for. Then I got this call from a former student of mine, Calvin Lee, who was taking one of my woodworking classes at Long Beach State. And he said, look, I'm working for a company now, and we're doing a presentation to King Fahd of Saudi Arabia. And they're remodeling the mosques at Mecca and Medina. We're putting together this whole visual thing that then we're going to encapsulate into, at that time, it was a VHS cassette. And we want a box to present to the king with a photo album, gold embossed photo album, and 2 copies of this VHS cassette. So I created this box with a good friend of mine, David Heckman. He and I were studio partners in grad school. We worked together, created this box, which led to another box, and another box led to a bunch of boxes. These boxes were to hold solid silver miniatures of the mosques at Mecca and Medina that they were redoing. This is my partner, David. We got an order for 10 more of these boxes. Every time we turn around, there's more. We did this wood marquetry stuff. And then this is, well, on the far left is Calvin Lee, my former student. This is me with the big old mustache. This is my partner, David, and then Marty Brinkerhoff, who owned the company. Well, Marty also liked my artwork. He said, hey, can you make a conference table for me? So jumped in, designed and built a conference table for him. Then he wanted a desk for his office. So I made this unique desk for his office. It's just like one thing led to another, led to another, led to another. And I feel, very fortunate that all these opportunities came up. So now we will stop sharing again. I can figure this out. There we go.
Okay. Wow. Wow. So it's my understanding you eventually accepted an opportunity to return to Disney, but in a different capacity, in a different role than what you were doing. Why did you decide to make that decision? And was that new role more rewarding?
Well, the new role was considerably different from the previous one. A couple of my friends that had been in the entertainment art department with me had moved on to the Disney store that was creating these retail locations within malls all over the United States. And they asked me if I wanted to get involved. And so I thought, well, at the time, although I was doing all these projects, including my artwork, this was like, I'm going to say early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when the recession hit. And this was not like the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, but it was a pretty big recession. I saw a lot of my work drying up. The Saudi projects were all done. A lot of the architects that were giving me work were no longer working. Some of them were leaving LA. So when my friends came to me and said, hey, do you want to participate in the design and fabrication of all the theming components that go along with the Disney stores, I said, okay, what have I got to lose? I'm still living in the loft downtown, and yeah. So they didn't pay me what I was hoping to get paid, but they bridged my service. So I got to pull back those early years from entertainment art and add it to my overall, which in the end really helped out in my retirement program. So I will share some more video, not video, some more images here. So this time I'm hiring a model builder. So I hired a model builder to build this theme component that we're going to put in the ceiling of the Disney stores. And then on the right is the actual item that has to be engineered because it's cantilevered, it's hanging over people's heads. So, and then I worked with sculptors to sculpt the Disney characters, get those into fiberglass and painted. Murals, we were doing 200 to 300 stores a year. And so we had to mass produce all of this stuff. So this is just a row of one band after another of these murals. And it was way before the digital era. So these were all individually hand painted murals for every store that we did. And this was the store. Now, heavily themed, but we were telling a Disney story. The characters were filming a movie, and we were trying to figure out how to showcase that and still make it a fun place for guests. So then we became a global team. So this is a store in Paris on the Champs-Élysées. So I had partners in Hong Kong. I had partners in Tokyo. I had partners in the UK. And this was the Champs-Élysées, where on the first floor, we did a 30-foot diameter chandelier, had thousands of parts and pieces, all silver leafed. We had it fabricated in Los Angeles and then shipped to Paris. And I spent a considerable amount of time there overseeing the installation of this. It was a beautiful piece. And it hung above the stairwell, and all the characters, everything was silver leaf. And then this is in Florence, Italy. So this is my paint staff in Florence, Italy. Nobody spoke English. This was the other thing I was learning for the first time in these other countries is dealing with, the language barrier. And we didn't always have interpreters on site. So you got really good at pointing and, trying to explain with your hands, which I think I got pretty good at, actually. And this was the finished product of the Florence, Italy store. In fact, it still looks like that today. My wife and I visited this last year. Was before the pandemic hit for sure. And it still looks the same. I was shocked because there aren't many of these stores left. And then this is in Tokyo. This is right outside of Tokyo Disneyland at what's called the Ikspiari Center, which is a shopping district that's outside of Tokyo Disneyland. And it was very unique. So all of these were we called flagship stores. They were one-offs. Plus we were doing the whole rollout program of the stores in every mall around the US. So I had visited about every mall there is in the country, including several over there in Ohio, like Southern Park Mall, Eastwood Mall over in Niles, I guess. We had Disney stores everywhere. And then I was traveling all over the world. And then what happened was Disney decided to sell the stores. They were going to get out of the retail business. We're not going to do this anymore. The stores weren't making money. And all of a sudden I'm looking and going, whoa, okay, now I don't have a job anymore. And I kind of got used to having a check every week. And so it was like, one of the architects that was working on all these stores with me actually said, we'd like to take you to lunch. We understand that all you guys are getting laid off. And so this company called Lane Drews, they were architects. They took me to lunch and they said, so what are you going to do now that you're no longer working for Disney? And I said, well, I have a Master of Fine Arts degree. I think I'm going to go back and start doing my art again. And they looked at me like, what? They didn't even know I had a degree in art. They didn't know I was a sculptor. They said, well, we're building a new building in Burbank. We'd like to have a sculpture piece out front of it. Are you interested? So what I did was created a model, which they bought off on, and designed and fabricated this piece, which is 17 feet tall, weighs just over a ton. This is another angle of it. And then the detail, it combines steel and stainless steel and copper all in the same piece. And this was the first outdoor on the street commission. So this is in Burbank, California. It was a really fun thing to do. And then in the middle of this, I mean, literally in the middle of fabrication on like a couple of days before we're getting ready to install it, I got an opportunity to go back to Disney again. This was in a whole different capacity. This was people calling me saying, there's a role for you down at the Disneyland resort again, but this time you'd be managing a department. You'd be managing the, they called it the store development department, and you'd be responsible for all the retail venues within the park and within the entire resort. And I thought, okay, why not? So I joined up, and this is an example. This was a teeny little hat shop in the corner of, it wasn't Main Street, it was Town Square at Disneyland. That fixture with all the hats on it right there is supposed to be inside that little shop. They actually wheeled it out into what is the exit for the Lincoln Theater lobby, because the shop just wasn't big enough. So they said, what can you do to help us get more room in this shop? So we actually got a deal with the powers that be that allowed us to take over part of that exit path, because it was much bigger than it needed to be. And we completely remodeled and rebuilt the store to give them twice as much capacity as they had. And this was good experience for me, because now I was working with the finance team. I became really good partners with finance, because they would write up the numbers and say, look, if you give him the money to remodel this shop, we're going to make, you know, X amount more revenue from that shop. And so they were like writing checks hand over fist. And it was another great job for me. This was an attraction that was no longer functioning in the middle of Tomorrowland. And they said, underneath it, that building at the bottom where you see those two squares, that used to be where they would broadcast Radio Disney, and they were no longer doing that. They said, can you do something with this space? So we turned it into a little merch shop called Tomorrowlanding. And so this is a shop, small, but revenue generator. This is a ticket booth in downtown Disney. What can you do with this? Yep, turn it into Disney pin traders. So needless to say that this was a great job for me. I had a whole department of people working and helping me out. I mean, it's truly teamwork to get all this stuff done. Then DCA, which is the second gate down at the Disneyland Resort. DCA stands for Disney's California Adventure. And they wanted to redo the entire entry plaza for the park. And it was all retail and restaurants. And so they pulled me into it. And this was the first opportunity I got to really work with Walt Disney Imagineering. And Imagineering is really responsible for all the design and development of the theme parks. And so I was coming in as the merch guy, because I knew merchandise, and I was helping to lay out and work with the designers at WDI to get this, all the locations done. And then Cars Land. This was the first new land that had been developed for a long time. And this was based on the Disney Pixar film Cars. And this was a floor plan off to the right. And of course, the rendering from the film, we had to go by that. I had 3 different merchandise locations, one of which was this little curio shop here. And this is that finished piece. But what's really important about this piece is the gentleman in front there with the hard hat and the safety vest is Bob Weiss, who is now the president of Walt Disney Imagineering. And he started talking to me. He said, we're working on this little project down the road, and we're not sure exactly how it's going to play out in terms of timing and everything, but it's called Shanghai Disneyland. Are you interested? And I went, oh yeah, I'm interested, but not as the merch guy. I want to come in as an Imagineer and be part of the design development team that moves this forward. He said, okay, I'll get back to you. So then what happens? 2008, 2009 hit, my entire staff is laid off, the entire staff. So it's just me. I got tons of projects going on, including Cars Land, including Buena Vista Street, including Disneyland, downtown Disney. I'm looking at myself going, there's no way I can do all this. I'm going to fail. And lo and behold, my friends from the Disney store said, guess what? We bought back the stores. We're going to start rolling out a whole new store design. Are you interested? Yep. So Imagination Park was born, a brand new Disney store design. So they pulled me into this. I worked to help to get the first year of rollout done on this one. The stores were heavily themed, but also very interactive. Then we built one in Times Square and one in San Francisco on Stockton Street. And at that time, it was really crazy because I was flying to New York, back to LA, San Francisco, back to LA, back to New York. These were going on simultaneously, just crazy, crazy times. But you know what? Whenever I had a little extra time on my hand, I decided to do some more art. So I started this new art series because I got an opportunity to do a one-person show, called it my Jawless series. These are some of the pieces. Actually, I had that first one at a show at the McDonough Art Museum at one of the alumni art shows. But this was a whole series I did called the Jawless series. And so for that, I will stop sharing my screen again. If I can figure that out. Stop sharing. Okay.
Well, I have to say that I know you, and we've talked quite a bit, and I'm learning even more about you tonight rather. These are things that I didn't know about. So with over 30 years in Walt Disney Company, what would you see would be your proudest accomplishment? What are you the most proud of?
Well, it's a good way to end your career, and it was really the Shanghai project. I was on the project for 5 years, and the last 2 years, which were in the field on construction, I lived in Shanghai, and it was an amazing experience. My wife Maureen was unable to move there with me because she was ending up her career as an elementary school teacher, but she would come and visit me. She came and visit me a number of times while I was living there. But what an amazing experience it was, first of all, just living in China and then working with the Chinese to get this project done. So I will share my screen again. And now I'm really going to have to go fast because I want you to see as much as possible. So this is Shanghai, an incredibly dense city. Beautiful city at night for sure, very modern looking. But one of the things I really liked about it is the juxtaposition of the very traditional against the very modern skylines. This is the Shanghai Disneyland site the first time I saw it. I was on one of the little observation towers that they had built. And then this is way down the road. So I'm going to, with my little cursor here, this is a moat that was built around the entire piece of property because this was in a floodplain. These were former rice paddies. So Disney built this lake, it didn't exist. That is our park, well underway at that point. This is for a second park to be designed and developed down the road. This is the Disneyland Hotel, this is the Toy Story Hotel. My responsibility started clear out here. I was responsible for the toll plaza, the whole parking lot, what is called the Ptc Bridge, which is a bridge the length of 4 football fields that came over here to the entry. It was a heady amount of responsibility because once you got to the entry, then all the way down toward the castle, which is typically like Main Street in the regular park, not in this park. This is me standing on a tower in the middle of the park, looking out toward the lake. That's the main entryway. The infrastructure is underground, but other than that, it's dirt. And this is me doing a selfie from the tower while you can see steel progressing. And this is a little video that I want to share of a portion of my responsibility. The circle that you see right there is actually the entry fountain to the park. So we're going to run this video. It's a little drone thing that Dirk is flying for us. Off to the right and the left are the ticket booths. And then now we're going through what are the turnstiles. So guests obviously get their tickets, go through the turnstiles. We have stroller rental, guest services right and left. Then we're going up through the entry portal. That's Dirk flying the drone. This is the entry portal. And then we'll go down what it would typically be Main Street. This is actually called Mickey Avenue. The whole story is about Disney characters, Disney and Pixar characters. The interesting thing about this too is that this was taken on Chinese New Year's. There's nobody in the park. Otherwise, it would look like an ant farm here. There would be thousands of people all over the place. This goes up to, then there's that tower that I did the selfie from right there. And then we're going over to the castle. Then all the other lands splay out from this. So this is me and my buddy Jeff, all harnessed up because we were climbing all over the scaffolding every day. And it was pretty dangerous out there. This is example, some of the scaffolding. I'm taking this photo from up on top of the clock tower at the entry plaza, looking out over parts of Mickey Avenue as it progresses. This is at the vendors. I had tons of vendors. This vendor was making brick veneer for me, multicolored brick veneer that we used on the facades of some of the buildings. Love this shot. This is the morning safety meeting. Every morning, all the workers met out there in one spot, got the briefing on being safe, and then go work. Pretty amazing. And then it rained. Yes, it rained. The only time they would close down the site was when we got a typhoon warning. And we did have several typhoon warnings while I was living there. But those were usually a day long and that was it. They came and went. So when it rained, we built structures above where we were working, plastic and wood and everything, just so we could keep working. This is my summer attire. It got brutally hot and humid in the summer. I had all these UV shirts and all kinds of stuff, tons of sunscreen on me. And then it got cold. It got actually bitter cold, and it snowed a little bit. Not Ohio snow, nothing like Ohio snow, but it did snow a little, and it got bitter cold. So this was my winter attire. We had heaters to same thing. We sectioned off areas with plastic. We ran the heater so we could keep working. We had to keep working. So this is an entry fountain. Concept on the left, little model being made, full-size piece. And then we did water testing, we did light testing. This was the pump room underneath it for just this small little fountain. This is me art directing the positioning of it because the position was important so you could see the clock tower beyond and then the castle beyond that. And it was like the mega photo opportunity. And then of course at night. So we did these trial runs to the park where we let a certain amount of guests in before the park was all 100% complete. And this was on just one of these picture perfect, beautiful days. Shanghai rarely looks like this. It's usually gray skies and lots of smog. So this is like one of my favorite photos. And the marquees were really important. We had English and we had Chinese. Chinese down at the bottom because it was closer to the guests. There were a lot of discussions about the cultural aspects of this park and how we needed to play into it. Mickey Avenue in its finished form. This is one of the Sweetheart's Confectionery. This is Minnie Mouse's house where you can go buy all your sweets. And of course, I had all my retail experience in terms of laying out and store planning and all of that. So that came in hand here. And then of course, lighting. Lighting was really important. Plus music. We had music for the day, music for the night, music exterior, music interiors. And then every once in a while, we'd walk in the morning and it would look like this because they had a sewer line, water line break or something. They'd tear up the whole street that they just poured concrete on. And it was like walking through a minefield. And then this is the scaffolding would go up, the scaffolding would come down. And part of the reason the scaffolding would come down is because they had to do area development out in front of the facades of the building, whether it's sprinkler lines or plant trees, or the other time, the scaffolding would come down was when the Chinese government was coming through for a look. And they took all the scaffolding down so it looked like they were further along than we actually were. We were scared that we were ever going to get this park open. Me in a sea of concrete, yeah, that was kind of normal on my phone. Talented people. This was a woman who was painting flowers on the outside of Daisy's Cafe. So this is the second floor of Daisy's Cafe. We did things like those TV antennas on the roof were actually lightning rods. So we had a lot of themed functional components. On that little balcony, there's a cart with flowers in it. That's actually a speaker shroud. There's the giant speaker for the parade that's up there. Then the interior of Daisy's. All the artwork on the wall is completely unique, one-off art for every facility that we did. And then this is the most important part of this particular thing. We had a jukebox there. All of the choices of music on the jukebox were Disney songs, except G3 and G4. Hey, hey, my baby's gone from the Sound Barrier, our first 45 on the jukebox. Didn't really play, but it was on the labels. So then Remy's Patisserie, a bakery, entrance to that, interior. We did all kinds of special media, like having Remy look like he was inside the kitchen. This is me with my laser pointer, one of my favorite tools. Working on the bank building, another one of the great painters that was working on this huge bank building. Creating the vault door and other props and stuff for interiors of the shop. And here's the vault door installed with Ralph, one of my lead painters. Signage, we had graphics, signage just everywhere. This was Avenue M arcade, interior, Goofy Way, Goofy's Toy Shop. And then this was for the front of the music shop. We created these giant saxophones and clarinets and trumpets, and they ended up on the facade of the music store. One of my favorite facades. And then we had these glass mosaic tiles made. We had 4 of these panels made for the front facade of this building. And it was just amazing. These little young Chinese, I want to call them children, but I think they were a little older than children, but cutting thousands and thousands of parts and pieces of glass to create these mosaic tiles. This is me reviewing one. This is a finished product, so you can see the level of detail, how many pieces of glass tile are cut for these. And they were just amazing, amazing. And then they appeared on the front facade of this building. You can see some of them here. And then this is a courtyard. And what's important about this, and this is where I can use the pointer, right here is a doorway. Above the doorway is the number 33. This is the entrance to Club 33. This is one of only 3 Club 33s, which is a private club, that a members only club that Disney first had one in Anaheim. That's where the original one is, one in Tokyo, and this is number 3. You go in there, you go up to the 2nd floor, and the restaurant is up here, and there's also a viewing terrace up there. And this is really, out of this project, probably my proudest piece of architecture. Just an amazing, amazing restaurant. And then I got to give a presentation because we were trying to get members to join. And so this is me speaking to new prospective members of joining this exclusive club. And this is another one of my favorite photos. This is actually the Disney family. I got to walk the Disney family. That on my left, actually my right, but to the left of the image is Roy Disney, descendant of the other Roy Disney, but and then off to the right is his wife and his 2 kids. And that's my beautiful wife, Maureen. This is on the terrace of Club 33. So that's the view that you get from up there. So now we go to some of the work. Steel vendor, steel installed. Glass vendor, glass installed. So you can get a level of how much detail goes into these parts. And these are all the outer buildings. This is me back at the steel vendor. So when I wasn't on site, I was at a vendor. Some of them I had to, they came and picked us up and drove us to them. Some of them were 3 and 4 hours away. Some of them we had to fly to. And then this is, again, the building progressing. And then this is a video I wanted to share. One of the vendors, this is one of the, there's a little bit of music to this. So I'm going to kind of let it play through with the music. I think you'll be able to hear it. But the vendor created this sort of unbeknownst to me. They asked if they could videotape me while I was coming and buying off on stuff. This is for one piece of glass that was created for one building in this site. It's a short video. So I think that may be a good place to to stop this. I have so much more to show, but I've already overstepped my time. I want to share one more thing. Through all this, I have been doing a new series of art pieces. I'm going to throw just a couple of those up right now. So I will share the screen again, just show you a few pieces, and then that'll be that. It's from my new series. And that's about all I have to say for the day. There you go.
Well, Larry, I'm almost speechless here. Just what I was thinking was, it must have been just an extraordinary experience to work with that collaboration of sheer talent that you worked with on all those projects.
It was. And you raise a really good point, because it truly is a partnership. It's always a partnership. You have everything from, lighting designers to technical engineers to sound engineers, and obviously fabricators. And it takes an army of people to put together a project that big. So it was truly an amazing experience.
Well, a stunning array of talent, including yourself, right there, kind of watching over everybody. So it's just such an impressive career. So Larry, would you like to say anything else in closing our conversation?
No, it's good to see you, Greg.
It's good to see you too.
I hope those watching got something out of it. And again, I like to encourage, especially the young ones that are just getting started on their career, to just put your best foot forward. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of hard work, and if you really persevere and you head after your goals, you can do it.
Yeah. And you did mention Richard Mitchell, and I did communicate with Mitch. I know he's watching tonight. So a little shout out to Mitch, right?
Yeah.
Mitch and Karen, hope to see you soon too. Well, Larry, I really enjoyed speaking with you tonight. And thanks again for taking the time to share experiences with me and our viewers. Thanks so much for doing this. And thanks to everybody else, everybody that's watching tonight. I'm sure they thoroughly enjoyed your presentation and your experiences over the many years.
Well,
all right.
It was great for me to be able to share.
Okay. Well, take care and be safe.
Okay. See you later.